Yes. To answer the question in the title, yes. How many people do you know read for fun? Probably not a lot. And if they do, they're probably not super consistent. It's likely you don't even read for fun. In fact, many of my friends go as far as to make fun of me for reading as a hobby. And then I realized some people genuinely don't understand how I could sit down and read a gazillion words just for fun. In a Substack post I read, someone explained why people seem to be getting dumber, less poetic and romantic, and more vulnerable to propaganda. It's because they stopped reading. When everyone reads less, the quality of life begins to degrade. Think about it. Do you gravitate to summaries of articles when researching now? Putting articles and videos through AI to summarize it seems so efficient, but I can't help but wonder if this is also contributing to our declining literacy rates. A recent OECD report states that adult reading levels are dropping around the world. In 2024, 21% of adults in the United States were illiterate, and global literacy rates have grown by 2.2% from 2024 to 2025. The saddest part, 773 million people worldwide can't read at all. Some people aren't even given the opportunity to learn. I think the most concerning of all is that Gen Z and younger generations like Gen Alpha and Beta are reading less. The Walton Family Foundation and Gallup 2025 Voices of Gen Z study found that 35% of Gen Z K-12 students said they dislike reading and 43% said they rarely or never read for fun. Before you hit me with the, is literacy even that important? Yes, it is. Extremely. Reading creates a theater in your mind, regardless of genre. Literacy is important to understanding historical texts and how some might still be relevant today. It's important to understanding how society works and how you yourself work. Reading affects your confidence and self-esteem because it is crucial to helping us learn. Even with the masses of videos, podcasts, and movies, articles, books, and being able to understand ancient inscriptions are still very important. And illiteracy is quite costly, stealing around $2.2 trillion from the United States in 2024. Reading is important because language is important. Language influences how we express and perceive ourselves and the world around us. And on the topic of books, language is handled particularly intricately by 1984 by George Orwell. This book takes place in a dystopian world where language is simplified to words like ungood, doublethink, and unhuman. There are no words like horrible, terrible, and other synonyms for the word bad, or any synonyms at all. While some people might find this efficient, only having one word to describe a whole genre of things could be very limiting. And this is coming from a writer and a reader. Language directly interacts with our individuality. In fact, Orwell's discussion of language emphasizes its importance to behavior control. Language gives people the power of expressing thought. If you're not given the proper words, you cannot properly express thought. Literacy also supports essential skills that are crucial in modern life, like critical thinking, communication, and collaboration. The National Literacy Trust reinforces this by stating that those with strong literacy skills not only perform better academically, but are also more likely to develop competencies leading to successful employment. Literacy also serves as a foundation for lifelong learning and adaptability in a world that is constantly changing. Reading also encourages civic engagement by pushing individuals to become informed and active members of their communities. According to the Citizenship Foundation, young people who read as a hobby are more likely to vote and engage in communal activities. Strong literacy skills have also been proven to enhance mental health by allowing young people to articulate their thoughts and feelings. Research from the University of Sussex demonstrates that reading can reduce stress levels by up to 68%. Literacy also allows for people to connect with others around the world, encouraging and influencing the way young people communicate and collaborate across cultures. Reading also fosters increased feelings of empathy and understanding, allowing people to connect more meaningfully. According to the Chronicle of Higher Education, more college students are coming to class unprepared, struggling to read and comprehend long passages, with some not even seeing the point of reading at all. With the decline of reading endurance from students specifically, also comes the lack of critical thinking skills and vocabulary. Beth McMurtry at The Chronicle suspects the rise of social media influences the way we view text and reading. More and more people don't read at bedtime, instead opting for stories within Instagram posts and captions. This might also have to do with the fact that college and university readings are usually harder to comprehend and sometimes boring. I find my friends being unable to find time for a 10-page reading and just getting notes and a summary from ChatGPT. But while it's not true that no one reads anymore, if you've checked the book talk community and the fact that local bookstores are still standing, there has been a downward trend in recent years. The constant distractions from social media and other digital interruptions has probably played a part in decreased dedicated reading time since the 2010s. All this paired with the fact that movies and shows are rising forms of entertainment, it's no wonder so many people stopped reading. When I ask people why they've stopped reading, the most common reason is that they don't have time because of their academic and social commitments. And I get it, we live in a culture where rest is devalued because there should always be something we're doing. Rest, in this context, to me, means anything that isn't focused on productivity. Rest is simply consuming, like watching a movie or doing nothing at all. I've noticed two types of people around me regarding rest. The first type work themselves to the bone and claim there's no time for sleep or food or anything else because there's always something more productive to be done and there was never time for rest. And the second type knows that there's work. They just leave it off at the very last second, claiming to be resting. So it seems like everyone's waving between two extremes of never resting or always resting. I put this in quotations because when you're always resting, is it still rest? My friends who read can be found in both of these categories. So how big of a role does culture really play in our consistency with reading, or with general rest? If we know there's something more productive to be done, why do we still settle for something that we've been systematically taught to devalue? My guess is because rest can also be split into two different categories: good rest and bad rest. Good rest is productive. It's a type of rest that if you said you did, people would look at you in awe and wish that they had time for it. This includes things like cleaning, doing your chores, and reading. Reading is seen as a productive hobby because it's viewed as a nerd hobby. We all know that reading enhances your overall performance in life. So, even with that knowledge, why do people still shun reading? And why did people stop? It's largely ingrained in our culture, of course, and in the infrastructure around us. If we have limited access to bookstores and libraries, we feel less inclined to pick up a physical book. But because technology is advancing like crazy, we can now read online. Ebooks and audiobooks are additional ways you can incorporate reading into your life. Personally, I prefer to read the text if not on paper than on a screen, but I can definitely see the appeal of audiobooks. But another issue is not that many people believe they don't have time for reading, but are decreasing attention spans. With the advancement of apps like TikTok and Instagram, and almost every social media platform having some way to scroll short-form videos, many are finding it harder to focus on one specific thing for a stretched period of time. One of my friends deleted Instagram to stop scrolling, only to start scrolling on WeChat channels. I didn't even know you could scroll on WeChat. Books don't capture people's attention as fast as short videos do, so people feel more inclined to reach for these short videos in their free time, because of dopamine and all that jazz that doctors warn us about. But leisure reading has been on the decline since the 1980s, so there was definitely something before the rise of TikTok distracting people from books. The more likely culprit at the time being television's boom from 1955 to 1995. Leisure reading is based off our inexhaustible taste for stories, and the decline of leisure reading can also be because of the competition of other forms of media who also tell stories that I've mentioned before. People can get their stories from video, television, and radio. Let me ask you, how long has it been since you've read? Answering that question, you might realize you did have a reading journey. Everyone has. The hard part about having reading as a hobby, or anything as a hobby, is sticking with it. So external factors are not the only ones pushing back against leisure reading and literacy. A first reason is exhaustion. Sometimes we can't read because we're far too tired. Reading requires you to be steady enough to have a room for someone else's voice. So even if you do read, you might guilt yourself for not reading enough. Or you might even ignore books to avoid this guilty feeling. A second reason is that you're reading the wrong books. I've pushed myself to read classics knowing the language was going to completely throw me off. I read many of Jane Austen's works without actually feeling like they were for me. Just the feeling of saying I've read classics and Jane Austen is what forced me through these books. And I do understand that there are people who love reading classics, but I don't think I'm one of them. Reading shouldn't be for how other people perceive you, because if it is, it's no wonder you would hate it. Reading should make you curious about your own self. A third reason is that you don't know what to read. You've probably forced yourself through a book you used to like, only to realize that it doesn't have the same value to you as it did. A Substack post I read said, "Reading lives ignite not through discipline, but through understanding. We prefer books we can understand ourselves with." So, if you don't know what to read, don't immediately start scrolling through Book Talk. Ask yourself, what kind of books do you know you like? What is something that you're currently obsessed with? And what is something that you want to learn? We don't need to rediscover an old path. We just need to find a new one. The real literacy crisis is not that we've forgotten how to read, but that we've never learned to guide ourselves to reading outside of a classroom. You don't need a list or a plan to start reading. All you have to do is follow your curiosity, your intuition. A book is just a structure for attention, somewhere your mind can explore for a while. Everything else is your creation. The systems themselves aren't fully lost either. On a national level, Iceland turns books into gifts during their Christmas book flood, where families spend the holidays reading together. Japan has integrated books and manga into its everyday life, even in the midst of a hyper-digital world, with people consuming manga internationally as well. According to Forbes, Singapore also invests in reading challenges and libraries that connect literacy and imaginations. And on a more personal level, any type of reading can help you intellectually, even just a bit. This can mean anything from reading on blogs to social media, especially on platforms like Substack and Tumblr. And it also includes reading magazines. There are entire libraries filled with physical magazines, and online magazines exist as well. Reading one page a day is still reading. If you feel like one page isn't enough, then you'd be wrong. There is no bar of reading enough. Right now, many people are in the cycle of underconsumption. Many people don't read at all. And while we're on the topic of underconsumption, let's flip the coin and talk about overconsumption culture. The hobby of reading has unfortunately been a victim of overconsumption, especially with the rise of Book Talk and Bookstagram and platforms like that. With these platforms normalizing 100 physical book TBRs and turning reading into its own fast fashion. Book Talk normalizing having 10 copies of the same book just because they had to get the special edition ones, a few paperbacks, and the hardcover. Book Talk in similar communities also normalize buying mass amounts of books despite having stacks already at home that you haven't read. These books also usually come from the same places: Amazon, Barnes & Nobles, Target, and Indigo. The same few stores every time, which sounds like fast fashion shopping. Also, the shaming of borrowing books from libraries in these communities is upsetting. Sure, books can be viewed as special, but to romanticize them so much that you have to display 20 versions of a book that you haven't even read is crazy. Most books I see marketed now always fall under the same tropes, some marketed even falsely as enemies to lovers, when there is not nearly enough time for love to build. All these tropes slapped together and authors getting cancelled left and right. Book Talk itself is also just exhausting to keep up with. The biggest concern I have with Book Talk is obviously overconsumption, but also how many books market lust as love. Like, if they did it in the closet, the kitchen floor, and in the freaking car, all in the span of a month, they're not in love. Love is not purely physical. Love has never been purely physical. Love also takes much longer than a month to grow, even if you do feel an immediate, intense connection to someone. But all this aside, book talk recommendations are sometimes peak. Some of my favorite books are book talk books, like The Song of Achilles, which is the only book that has come close to making me cry, and The Cruel Prince, and like the rest of its series. So yes, the trend of illiteracy is growing, and has been since the 1980s. So we know social media is not our only culprit, though it probably is adding fuel to the fire. It is our entire attitude towards reading. Because it's so accessible to read online, our access to literacy has grown. The main reason people don't read, despite that though, is because they don't have enough time. Or they feel that they don't have enough time to read enough. I understand wanting to sit down for hours to read, but I can only really do that during summer. And I know people who just never have the time for it. So it's very important to lower the bar of what it means to read enough, or get rid of it. Especially if you know it's not an attainable, sustainable daily goal. Global illiteracy rates have been on the decline, suppressing support in developing skills like critical thinking, creativity, and communication. Literacy is also important because language is important. Literature helps us find words to express what we're feeling. Because when we understand ourselves, we begin to understand the people around us. We regard the world with more empathy and understanding, which increasingly I find that sometimes we lack. The lack of recreational reading also stems from systemic issues of failing to strike a balance between under- and overconsumption and the minimization of rest. Everyone was a reader at some point. We've all had to read books through school, and even if you didn't like them, it makes you a reader. Other factors of why people don't read anymore are because you're too tired, forcing themselves to read books they don't like, if they don't know what they want to read. All of these factors are understandable. Don't push yourself to read when you genuinely feel like you can't or don't want to. Overconsumption on social media has also affected the reading community, with the romanticization of lust and fast fashion of tropes and the same types of characters. So it's not that you don't know how to read. It's that you don't know how to begin your reading journey outside of a school.